Hello!
And welcome to Larry's Library.
Hello, welcome to Larry's Library.
Giraffe.
This is Giraffe. Where's Giraffe? There's Giraffe. All right.
Today I'm going to play.
Okay. Today we're continuing with Swiss Family Robinson after they dealt with the whale in our last chapter. Today it's chapter 40, the boat propeller or rowing machine, a turtle drive. The day had scarcely dawned when we were all up and ready for work. The 4 tubs of fat were raised from the ground, and a strong pressure being applied, we squeezed out as much of the oil as possible, and as this was the finest and purest, we filled 1 or 2 of the entrails with it. The rest was emptied into a large iron kettle, and a slow fire being applied, it was soon reduced to a liquid state. A large iron spoon, which we had saved from the wreck and which had been originally intended for the sugar factory, served us to empty the oil into the entrails from the kettle. All these works were carried on at a distance from Felsenheim, as we did not wish to perfume the area around our habitation with the fetid odor of whale oil. While we were occupied in our manufacture of oil, my wife made me a proposition which met my hearty approbation. It was to establish a new colony on the island of the whale. "We will put some fowls there," said she. "They will be safe from their 2 great plagues, the monkeys and the jackals." I liked the project of my wife very much, and the children were so enchanted that they wanted to start immediately and put it into execution. But it was now too late, and I calmed their ardor by mentioning an idea I had conceived of fitting a propelling machine to the canoe. "Oh!" cried Jack, "the canoe will go along without any rowing. How fine it will be!" "Stop, stop," said I, "not so fast. All that I can do will be to save your arms some labor and quicken our speed." I immediately commenced the work. All my materials consisted of the wheel of a smoke jack and an iron-toothed axle upon which it turned. The machine that I constructed was not a masterpiece of execution, but it answered the purpose very well. A handle attached to the wheel put the machine in motion, and 2 large flat pieces of whalebone, nailed together in the form of a cross and fixed at each end of the axle, resembled the wheels of a steamboat. When the handle was turned, the wings of the whalebone beat against the surface of the water and drove the canoe forward. Its velocity was in proportion to the power imparted to the wheel. I will not attempt to describe the transports of joy that my children evinced when they saw the canoe gliding over the surface of the water. I was astonished myself at the rapidity of our course. We had scarcely touched the land when everyone was in the boat and begging me to make an excursion to the island of the whale. But the day was too far advanced to admit of such a thing, and I promised them that we would make on the morrow a grand trial of our vessel by an excursion by sea to the farmhouse at Prospect Hill, for the purpose of inspecting our colony there. My proposition was well received, and we immediately began to prepare our arms and provisions so that we could start early on the morrow. At the first dawning of the day, everybody was ready. We did not forget provisions, and my wife put up, in a double envelope of fresh leaves, a piece of the whale's tongue, which by the recommendation of Dr. Ernest she had cooked and spiced as a delicate viand. We gaily quitted the shore, and the strong current of the Jackal's River soon brought us into the sea. The breeze was good, and everything promised a favorable sail. We soon perceived Shark Island, the bank of sand where the whale had been stranded, and so well did our machine work that in a short time we found ourselves in sight of Prospect Hill. I had kept at some distance from the coast, as I was afraid that there might be some hidden rocks inshore which might destroy our frail bark. When we had arrived opposite the Wood of Monkeys, I ran the boat into a little creek and landed to replenish our stock of coconuts. It was with feelings of the keenest pleasure that we heard the crowing of the cocks through the woods, announcing the neighborhood of the farmhouse. We re-embarked and rapidly neared Prospect Hill, and we could plainly distinguish the bleating of our little herd. We landed and directed our course toward the farmhouse. Everything was in order, but what greatly astonished us was the wildness of the sheep and goats who fled on all sides at our approach. My sons began to run after them, but as the long-bearded ladies were far more agile than they were, they soon grew tired of the chase, and drawing from their pockets the strings with balls attached, they soon captured 3 or 4 of the fugitives. We distributed some potatoes and a handful of salt among them, in return for which they yielded us several bowls of most delicious milk. We dined at Prospect Hill. The cold meats we had brought had composed our repast, but the whale's tongue was unanimously pronounced most detestable and only fit for a sailor. We gave it to Jack's jackal, the only one of our domestic animals who had followed us. I left my wife to make the preparations for our departure and started out with Fritz to gather some sugar cane. I also dug up some roots of this precious article to plant on Whale Island. We weighed anchor, or at least we pulled up the stone that secured us, and coasted along in the direction of Cape Disappointment, which I wished to double, but the cape still justified its name, and a long bank of sand outstretching prevented our progress, and we were obliged to turn back. I hoisted the sail, we redoubled our labors at the wheel, and thanks to a little breeze that sprang up, we were soon in sight of Whale Island. On landing, my first care was to plant the roots I had brought from Prospect Hill. But my companions, on whose assistance I had counted, did not think the plantation of sufficient consequence for them, and ran off to the beach to gather shells. What happened? Tara? Can you stop crying and sit on my lap, and will you feel better? We have an injury. What happened? Come on.
I was just helping her up onto my lap, and she...
Come here.
And her...
No. But my companions, on whose assistance I had counted, did not think the plantation of sufficient consequence for them, and ran off to the beach to gather shells. My good wife supplied their places, and we too began our labors. We had scarcely commenced when Jack came running up to us all out of breath. "Papa, Papa!" cried he. "Come here, quick! I have discovered the skeleton of a mammoth." I burst into a laugh and informed our little boy that his skeleton was nothing more than the carcass of our whale. "No, no," replied he, "they are not fish bones, but those of some immense animal, and besides, they lie a great deal farther up on the sand than the whale did." Jack implored and entreated so earnestly that I consented at last to go, but another voice soon stopped my progress. "Run, run this way!" screamed Fritz from some distance, waving his hand to hasten my arrival. "Quick, a monstrous turtle that we are not strong enough to turn." I caught up 2 handspikes and ran as fast as possible to the spot where I found Ernest struggling with a monstrous turtle, which he held by one leg, but which, despite all his efforts, had reached the border of the sea. I arrived just in time, and throwing one of the spikes to Fritz, we were able to turn the enormous animal on its back. It really was of prodigious size, about 8.5 feet in length, and could not possibly weigh less than 500 pounds. Are you going to be okay? You're letting the whole world see you cry. I think you're okay. Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. I did not know how we should be able to carry it away. However, the position in which we had placed it gave us time for reflection. But Jack had not forgotten his mammoth and continued teasing me to go and see it. I soon perceived that it really was our whale, but the birds of prey had not left a morsel of flesh on the bones which had blanched in the sun. I showed him our footprints in the sand and some morsels of whalebone which we had forgotten. "Can we not," said Fritz, in considering the skeleton of a whale, "draw from this mountain of bones some utility?" "I do not know," said I, "what use we can make of them. The Hollanders make palings of them, and also rustic chairs which produce a fine effect. And we will one day, when we have leisure, to make a philosophical chair for our museum." Discussing in this manner, we arrived at our plantation. I perceived that it was too late to finish our work that night. We buried the roots yet unplanted in the ground, and deferred till another day this important occupation. The giant turtle was now our grand object. I brought the boat round to where he lay extended on his back, and, forming a circle around him, we debated as to the means of transporting him. "Zounds, gentlemen," said I, striking my forehead, "we need not embarrass ourselves much. Instead of carrying this monster, let him conduct us back to Felsenheim. A turtle makes an excellent equipage on the sea. Fritz and I have tried the experiment." My idea was a happy one, and everyone was glad. I commenced by emptying out the barrel of water we had brought. Then, turning the turtle over on his feet, we We fastened the barrel to his back so that it was impossible for him to sink and draw us with him. A cord passed through a hole which we broke in the upper shell, served me for reins, and without losing time we all embarked for home. I placed myself in the prow of the canoe with a hatchet to cut the cord in case of need. Our course was accomplished rapidly and safely. A handspike that I held in my hand served me for a whip, and a blow well applied would rectify any deviation from the track. Master Ernest, the professor, compared us to Neptune gliding over the waves drawn by dolphins. We arrived safely at Felsenheim, and our first care was to secure our turtle and to replace the empty barrel by strong ropes. But as we could not keep him long in this way, we finished his life the next morning, and his enormous shell was destined to serve as a basin to our fountain in the grotto. The work cost some trouble and time, as it was very difficult to detach the flesh from the shell. It was a superb piece of meat, full 6 feet by 3, and afforded us material for many a delicious pot of soup. We inquired into all our works on natural history, and we came to the conclusion, the professor and I, that our turtle was the giant green turtle, the largest of all. And that's the end of chapter 40. Chapter 41, weaving machine, basket making, the alarm, a dangerous visitor, the ass falls a victim. This has been Larry's Library. Have a great evening.
Bye.
You feel better now, Tara? Thank you. I'm glad.
What